Hi guys, it's me. For those of you who know me, it's me. For those of you who don't, I'm Sarah. And I'm getting ready to go on a really scary and exciting journey. Yesterday, I booked my surgery date. Let's see. April 6th. Yeah, that's me. I'm Sarah Roberts. And before I get into my surgery, I guess I should start at the beginning so you know about what's going on in my life. And I can share a little bit about my journey and how I got here. So I guess I'm going to start with how it started. These guys right here, this would be my mom and my dad. Right before they got married, that's right when they fell in love. They were dating for 3 months before they got married, and they had my sister and I pretty quick. We're 18 months apart, and we were really close. We used to, beat the crap out of each other when we were little, but we're now. So anyways, that's my mom and my dad. Win and Steve. Okay. So, here I am, the day I was born. You may not see it, but I actually looked like a little monkey. I had black hair all the way down my back and on my shoulders. I had a port wine stain that came down on my head. And I was a face that only my parents could love. I was born in Bristol, Connecticut on June 15th, 1981. And for the first bit of my life, everything was going fine. And I was developing normally. I was doing everything head on. I was walking before I was supposed to. I was reaching developmental everything head on. About 14 months, 16 months, my parents were starting to notice I still wasn't really talking. I wasn't responding to noise. And so they realized I probably wasn't hearing very well. And they took me to the doctors, and the doctors did the hearing tests, which at the time were not required at birth to give a child the hearing test. And it showed that I had hearing loss, bilateral, in both ears. The doctors told my parents that the possibility of me learning to speak were very slim, that it probably wasn't going to happen. And my parents' thoughts on that were, so they decided they were going to have me fitted for hearing aids at 18 months old and immediately put me into intensive speech therapy, speech training with a speech pathologist at Nathan Latour Hospital in Gloversville, New York, with Ellen Aldrich, who is absolutely the most wonderful person. And I would recommend you going to her if she hadn't retired. But if you ever get the chance to meet her or fall upon her, introduce yourself. Because she would literally sit under a table with me. Because that's where I refused to sit at a table, and she would sit under a table with me and do my speech therapy. So for 3 to 4 days a week for 4 years, I did intense speech therapy, and obviously I proved every single doctor wrong, and I learned to speak pretty well. I when it came time for me to go into school, the school kind of gave my mother a hard time because they didn't think that I was going to be able to keep up with the other students. So they required me to take some, do some testing before going into school, and originally wanted to put me in like the special kids classes. And I absolutely blew them out of the water, and they're like, no, she doesn't need to be put in those classes. Put her in regular classes. None of my teachers knew that I wore hearing aids unless it was brought to their attention during parent-teacher conferences. I kept it extremely hidden. It was my deepest, darkest secret. I always wore my hair down. I was very self-conscious about it. Growing up, I was an absolutely normal kid, getting my first workbench from my dad, and me and my sister husking some corn from the cornfields. And my sister, a few years later down the road. I was never really a normal child, as you can see. After speech therapy, I was obsessed with going to school because I thought that I had always been in school. I had always went to school until I was 4 years old. Every day I went someplace, I went to school. I had homework that I had to do when I came home. So when I stopped going to speech therapy, there was a gap between when I was going to go to school. So when my sister was going to school, she's older than me, and she would get on the bus. This was her going to school, and I was so upset that I wasn't going to school. And there I am, standing there waiting for my turn to get on the bus to go to school because I thought it was unfair that I wasn't going to school. I loved school. I plan on going back to school after my surgery. So, with my type of hearing loss, it's not normal for my hearing to really get much worse. I was born with damage to my hair cells within my ear, where normally, say, a person's born with 20,000 hair cells. I was born with significantly less, or the ones that I was born with were damaged and weren't working. So when sound comes in, it doesn't catch the sound to send to the nerve that goes to the brain that says, this is the shower running, or this is so-and-so's voice saying whatever. I can't tell where sound's coming from. If something falls, I would hear something fall, but I don't know if it's behind me or next to me. So I will look, where's it coming from? I can't separate sounds. Like in a noisy situation, it's all this big jumbled noise. People would have a misconception with hearing aids that they would say just turn them up. That's not, it amplifies the sound, and it would just make everything louder and more jumbled, and it doesn't work like that. So about 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago, suddenly my right ear became very muffled. My audiologist believes one of two things happened. I was in a really bad car accident that I was miraculously lucky enough to survive. And I was hit by an 18-wheeler from the right side. We believe that either the noise caused damage to this ear, or I got a virus which caused damage to the cells, the remaining hair cells in this ear, which has made this ear extremely muffled. we tried a couple of different things to make the situation better. We had a tube put in this ear, which I've had tubes put in my ears before when I was little, to prevent ear infections from causing more damage to my already bad hearing. When the tube didn't help, they removed the tube, and we got what was called the super strength hearing aid to see if that would help, which didn't do anything. And at that point, I was relying on more of my hearing from the left ear and lip reading, which my lip reading is extremely good. I can lip read from 2 miles away and know what people are saying to each other across the room, and which is sometimes embarrassing that I'm listening to a conversation from someone else that I don't know, and I just will watch it. It happens. And then COVID happened, and face masks came into play, and as you can imagine, my ability to communicate went downhill. Without the ability for me to see people's lips, I'm really not able to communicate, like, at all. About 5 or 6 months ago, I received some blunt force trauma to the left side of my face, and that caused immediate, instantaneous damage to the left side of my ear, which has left me with profound deafness in both ears. So that's left me with 2 options, and that would be to start signing and enter the deaf community, which is an option, or to go with cochlear implants, which has potential downfalls, and it has absolute benefits. I spent a lot of time researching the benefits, and I've researched the potential dangers, which are pretty serious. There's possible facial paralysis, which is pretty slim. I've had Bell's palsy, which is basically your face is like a stroke victim. It goes like this. I've had Bell's palsy twice on my left side. Once was a result of shingles when I was about 7 or 8, and once as a result of Lyme disease. Both happened to be on the left side of my face. So my doctor has opted to not do the left side of my face, the left ear at first. We've decided to, although we want to do bilateral implants, we're going to start with 1 implant first, because the second reason why cochlear implants is potentially pretty dangerous, and that being you can potentially lose your ability to understand speech, which is really scary. And but I was raised to, you know, even if that were to be the case, don't be a whiny little shit. You're gonna figure it out. When you're young, when I was young and I had to learn how to understand sound and learn to understand what sound was, because my brain was not wired that way. I was not born to understand what sound was. It didn't make sense to me. This didn't come to here. So when sound came in, it didn't travel to here to here. So I had to learn what was going on. When you're young, your brain has a lot of what's called neuroplasticity, which means your brain's expanding and it's learning. It's built to learn at a young age. That's when you're learning things. That's your time to learn. Up until the age of about 7, you have an extreme amount of plasticity in your brain. So, and I think it was in the 90s, they passed a law that all children at birth have to have a hearing test. And the reason why they passed this is because that's the time when a child, the longer they go without hearing, the harder it is for them to pick up language. So once a child is tested for hearing loss at birth, within 6 months of that time frame, if they have hearing loss, they have to be fitted for hearing aids. That gives them the window so that they are able to hear and understand language. They have a better chance of being able to communicate at a normal level. So, me being 18 months old, I had good plasticity in my brain to pick up language. I'm hoping that I still have muscle memory back there to be able to, once I get an implant, that my muscle memory is going to kick in and it's going to help. What happens with a cochlear implant is they cut off what hearing you have. That might scare a lot of people. I don't have hardly any hearing left, so that doesn't scare me. There's next to none. Your hearing goes in your ear, it goes through what's called your cochlear, it travels through your cochlear, and then it would go up through some neurons and through a nerve, and the nerve connects to your brain, and it tells you what's being said, and you process that, and it tells you what's going on. What a cochlear does is it bypasses, cuts off that part where those hair cells are because they don't work anyways, and it goes directly to the nerve, to the brain. So it's going straight to your brain. So it's like someone talking going right to your brain. You don't have to think about it. It's going psh. It's like someone's jumping right inside your head. So it's going to help me with my what's called word discrimination. When you start to lose your hearing, you start to lose your word discrimination, your ability to understand what people are saying to you, because you're not hearing them, you're not understanding them. So you lose your ability to understand the sounds and what's being said. The longer you go without sound, the harder it is to get your discrimination back. So it's important, once you start to realize you're not hearing things, it's important to go to an audiologist, get hearing aids, if that's what it's necessary, hearing aids or an implant, so you don't lose your ability to understand speech, because you will lose your ability to understand speech. And the older you are, the harder it is to get that back, because the older you get, the less plasticity you have in your brain. So I'm really lucky that I have people in my life that are willing to work with me in the process that comes after the surgery. What happens with the surgery is you go in, it's an in and out surgery, it's 2 to 3 hours. cut off your hearing aid. Part of your head shaved. It's going to be my right ear. Part of your head shaved. They implant this device. It's a magnet. It goes underneath your skin. It's not inside your brain. It's in your bone. They implant it. Okay, it's a magnet. It's an electrode. There's a small, it looks like a little piece of plastic. That little piece of plastic goes inside your cochlear, and it winds down. It goes inside your cochlear, and that has electrodes on it. It has 22 electrodes. Those electrodes stimulate the nerve and send out electrodes. Okay, those electrodes are signals that it receives signals from what's called your processor. The processor is a thing that's gonna get stuck to your head. I chose one that does not go over my ear because I've had something over my ear. I don't have anything on right now, but I've had something that goes over my ear or in my ear my entire life. Sick of it. I don't want it. I'm tired. They make my ears itch. I don't want to deal with it. It's called a processor, a sound processor. And it sticks to your head like a magnet. It is a magnet. It sticks to your head. It doesn't fall off. It sticks to your head. And then it takes in sounds. And the best part about the one that I'm getting is it works in conjunction with Apple. Apple is one of the best companies out there, and Apple has worked together to make this product. It works with your phone, it streams, it has an app that you control your sound, your streaming. I can take, in my noisy situation, I can take that noisy situation and turn it off. It's gone. So I can hear you. If I can't hear you, I can change your voice so that I can hear you. I can make the situation adaptable so that I'm able to communicate better with you. Thanks to the people at Apple. So I'm really excited that people are really trying hard for people like me. So after the implant goes in, they sew you back up and they cut off your hearing. Can't hear at all. You're deaf in that ear. There's no sound. So even if I were to put my hearing aid in that ear, what little hearing I would normally have, there's nothing. So for 1 month, while this is healing, there's no sound. There's nothing. I'm going to be relying on this ear, which has sound, not a lot. So there's nothing. For a week, I'm not going to be doing good for about a week. I'm going to be not really doing good. I'm going to be out of it for a week. For a month, I'm not going to have sound in that ear. At the 1 month mark, I go in for what's called my activation day, where they stick my sound processor to my head and they turn it on. And that's when we start to make adjustments, and we do my first set of programming. We start out with a lower sound so I can get used to it, because I'm going to be hearing sounds that I've never ever heard before in my life, because it is guaranteed that I'm going to hear. It's guaranteed. I'm going to hear. What's not guaranteed is how my brain is going to process those sounds, because it's not going to understand those sounds because they've never heard them before. It's going to be like, what is this? It's going to be extremely overwhelming. I'm really excited because my activation day happens to be on my mom's birthday. And when I first got fitted for my hearing aids, the very first sound that I heard was my mother's voice. So, on my activation day, the very first sound that I'm going to hear is going to be my mom's voice. And that's me and my mom. This is a real her, though. She's the best person in the world. So, that's my backstory, and this is the beginning of my journey. This is my my order for my CAT scan and my MRI, so they can make sure that my ears normally shaped, my cochlear is normally shaped. I have that appointment. I set that up. Get my meningitis shot next week. And then I have to do my COVID test 2 days before the surgery to make sure I'm COVID free. My pre-op visit, my post-op visit, and then I'll be meeting with my implant specialist after my activation date. I think it's every week for 5 weeks after my activation, kind of as to do adjustments until we get the right level of noise. But I will have an app that allows me to do slight adjustments, not to make it extremely loud, but slight adjustments within a certain range. So I'm going to be keeping you guys up to date with the real, true story of how this goes. As you can see, I'm an artist. We're in my drawing room of my studio, which it took me quite a few years to get the dream studio. I've had a few studios, but this one's the one. It's at the bottom of Capitol Hill in Albany, New York. It's about 2,000 square foot, and I'll give you a tour next time. Thanks for watching, and until next time, see you guys later.